So let's look at a walkthrough. I've got a business problem. The business has multiple spreadsheets. It's all sort of spreadsheets linked. The business input that I was given is represented here. It's three different spreadsheets. So we've got a purchaser type and the land tax amount. In some cases, if the purchaser type, for example, in the first test was a permanent resident or citizen, we would actually have to go to the second spreadsheet and check the transaction type. If the transaction type was transfer between spouses, we'd have a land tax of 0. If you're a principal place of residence, or 1%. If it's an investment, we have to go further and do another check within the test 3. And this is what we call sort of a knockout rule implementation. So rules within PAM and DM best optimized when it's sort of used as an inference engine. However, it also has levers that help rule execution flow called RuleFlows. And these spreadsheets, how it goes from test 1, say go to test 2, if it's not triggered, go to test 3. These can be modeled in RuleFlows, and RuleFlows are modeled in a similar vein to sort of BPMN diagrams. So let's have a go of the UI I've built. This is a tax rules. I've got some set up here which I can put on change where I need to, and I can sort of also trigger versions. So I'm going to choose a foreign individual, an investment for 500,000. And I'm going to submit that. And I got a result of 4%. So if we go back to the business input, you'll see the individual foreign of 4%. So it should have run test 1 and returned that result. So if we look at sort of how the implementation was set up, mapping a rule flow with DMN. So I've pretty much mapped a flow where, test 1 executes, then there's a decision point. Do we need to go to test 2? Yes or no? If not, if there's a result, end the process and return the result. And similar to test 3. So let's now go into our Business Central project. This is the tax rules project. It consists of a number of assets. I've got DMN, I've got data objects, I've got a business process, which is the rule flow, and I've got the DMN for the individual knockout sort of test 1, 2, 3, which is again on the purchaser type, the transaction type, etc. So let's first go into the business process. Setup is simply sort of a script which accepts the input, sets up the input for the process. Test 1 will then go and underline and trigger the test 1 from DMN. Within the test, I could also sort of trigger scripting on the entry and exit, and simply I've got some system out print lines which will go to the logs. One of the test inputs, and you'll see how I've sort of mapped the spreadsheet that I was given into a DMN test. So this is our DMN editor, knockout test 1, and if I edit test 1, I'll come up with a decision table. Decision table's got an input here, an output, test 1, and I've simply lifted and shifted those spreadsheet types into a decision table within that DMN. So and similarly, if we go to knockout test 2, it will be of similar input. We've got form data input. Now this form data is actually a common model throughout the project. Within DMN, I can have data types, and in this instance here, I've created a common form data for all of those 3 rules, and it allows me to import that, and so you do get a lot of reuse. So if I went to the models that I've set up with this form data, you'll see it simply matches the purchase price, the purchase type, and the transaction type. And this pretty much maps it, the three inputs that I have with my form: purchaser type, transaction type, and purchase price. So the way to get form data in within Red Hat Process Automation Manager is to create what's known as a data object. And this data object here, also called form data, has the three inputs: purchase price, purchaser type, transaction type, but also has a result which enables me to return that object with the input and the result within the JSON request back. So the trick to invoke to get the form data object into input that the DMN model can understand is through a little bit of scripting. So I'm simply doing like a Java bean copy into a hash map. Then the DMN model will understand that hash map, and you can continue on, and the DMN will accept that through. So that is the trick to map the input that you're going to drive sort of the traditional RuleFlow process within Red Hat Process Automation Manager, and use DMN as your rule tasks. So feel free to go to this GitHub URL, try it out, import the project into Process Automation Manager, understand it, see the little scripting that you might have to do just to wire things together, and yeah, I look forward to hearing for your results. Let's now look at what we've done. We've taken our Excel spreadsheets, our three inputs. We've decided we want to map these as a rule flow, and that's pretty much a lift and shift of how it's behaving in those spreadsheets. We've mapped it to a rule flow, and then we've had to implement those individual tests within our DMN editor. The DMN editor accepts decision table in a very similar format to the Excel spreadsheet. I can then build that, deploy that, access that via API, build whatever custom UI, whatever external system I have. I can then invoke that API and start to get results back.